Let's talk about this thing, Valve's new Steam Deck. So 3 weeks ago, when I first got it in, I was super excited to pop it out of the box. And it far exceeded my expectations. Like, I had high expectations for it. I knew it would be good, but it was just that much better. The first thing I noticed that when I pulled it out was actually the case. This is a extraordinarily high quality case for something that costs $399 of the base model. If you think about companies right now, in this day and age, tech products, when was the last time a company included a high quality case in a product of this caliber? It's just not a thing. And so right off just looking at that, you know you're off to a good start. Okay, the first thing I did when I pulled it out was checked out performance. And the Steam Deck gets really good performance. It's partially because of the lower resolution screen, it's only 1280 by 800, but it's also because of AMD's new RDNA2 based GPU. And the performance is so good for a $400 machine. Now, not every game runs properly on the system right now. Some games aren't optimized yet, some games straight up don't even boot. But in general, you're looking at 60 frames per second or really close to it for even AAA titles. Most of the benchmarking I was doing here was with low to medium graphic settings, but on a 7-inch screen, it still looks really good. Now, if you take a look at the thermals on it, it doesn't run hot, it doesn't run loud, and the external temperatures are great, but I will say that the fans come on more often than I thought they would. Like, even when the system's idle, the fans kick in pretty frequently, and you would think that if it's not doing anything, that the fans could just remain silent, but in this current version of the software, they kick in pretty often. If you run these games at 60 frames per second, you're gonna chew through battery life really quickly. So some of these games can pull the full 25 watts, and on a 40 watt hour battery, you're gonna drain it in like an hour and a half. So to get the best possible battery life, you have to cut frame rate. And if you run this thing at 30 frames per second, you're seeing significantly longer battery life. But the thing is, a lot of games don't look good at 30 frames per second. Like, some games are really meant to be run at 60 frames per second, or as close as possible to 60. So it really depends on the title as well as the visual experience that you want to really gauge how much battery life you're gonna get. I'd say it's like 3 to 4 hours for the average high-end game title. You also get control of TDP as well as like GPU clock speed. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff you can tweak if you wanna get sweaty, but battery life, I'd say, is good. If you compare this to like Nintendo Switch that can easily get like 5-6 hours on average games, it's less than that, but I think for what the system's delivering, I'm very happy with the battery life. The Steam Deck also has FSR support, so it can render games at a lower resolution and then upscale it, which gives you better frame rates while extending battery life. It's kind of hit or miss right now though, because some games look great on it, others less so. You can enable it for all the games, but I think this is a feature that'll become much better over time as the device rolls out to more developers. Okay, the first game I played on the Steam Deck was Control. The performance was really good, but I did notice that the screen felt a little bit muted. Like, the colors just didn't pop the way that I would expect it to. Like, I've seen this level in Control, I wanna say like 50, 60 times, because I test it often when I do my laptop reviews, and it just felt a little dull on this screen. The panel does get quite bright, and if you play it in the dark, you can dim it really aggressively, and it's an inexpensive product, right? $399, I can't really complain about this screen, but if I'm being objective and I'm looking at this thing as a gaming device and I'm just looking at the colors on the screen, it's a little muted. Also, the touchscreen. So I've had a couple issues with it. The first is that if you poke too quickly, it'll skip inputs. You have to poke at it quite deliberately. But the other thing is the screen protectors. I ordered 3 of them. One of them didn't even fit. The second one, it did fit, but the middle area just stopped working. Like, I would poke at it and it would not register any of the inputs. The third one did work. So I don't know if it's a digitizer thing or it's a software thing they can tweak, but the touchscreen isn't the best. Same with the speakers. They get loud and the upper frequencies are great, but the mids and lows are just not represented properly. Now, when it comes to a gaming device, I'm okay with it. Like, a lot of games for like positional audio and just game sounds, upper frequencies are probably the most important for like just like doing the job. But in terms of like the ambient feel of a game, a lot of times it's like mid-tones and lower frequencies, and it's, I don't know. $399, I can't complain, but I'm just saying, if you wanted great speakers on the Steam Deck, they don't have them. Okay, now I wanna move this conversation over to what I think is the most unique part of this product. It's the controls. So I love these controls. I really think that this is what separates this product from anything else out there. So let's start off with the thumbsticks. These are awesome. They're responsive, they're well positioned, easy to replace if it ends up getting drift or just crapping out down the line. Nice tension on it. It's great for so many types of games. And I've never used sticks for Dota before, but they did a really good job with them. And it's not just the hardware. The developers tuned the controls a bit, and now these sticks can feel so good even in games that are usually played with a mouse. Now, for shooters, Would I prefer these over like a traditional mouse and keyboard? No way, and certainly not for any kind of competitive shooter, but for sticks on a controller, these are truly excellent. Now, the D-pad and the buttons. So when I first saw pictures and videos of this product, I thought right away that these things were positioned way too close to the edge, like way too close to the left edge for the D-pad and the right edge for the buttons. But holding them, they're in a really good position. They're comfortable to use for a long period of time, and for platformers, they're great, but I find that they're not great for fighting games. So I'm someone who spent like 500-600 hours playing Street Fighter 4 on different types of controls, like Xbox controllers, PlayStation controllers, that I've always been comfortable in them. But this controller, I don't know, maybe it's because they're so wide apart, like you can't like grip it tight like a regular controller, but I could not do like the regular FADC Ultra that I'm used to. Like this is a move that it takes a little bit of timing and you gotta be quick with it, but the inputs just weren't picking up. I tried for like 20 minutes, still couldn't do it. Okay, so there's also these haptic trackpads down here, and these are just mini trackpads that have motors underneath them that give you this tactile response as you slide your finger around. And they serve to give you just a better feel of the control or the accuracy of it. And I really like them. So these are similar in idea to Valve's Steam controller a little while ago, but the haptics in this device were way more powerful. It was like very clicky as you moved it around. It was like strangely tactile. These are more gentle, but they still get the job done. The faster you slide your finger around, the faster you feel that tactile feedback. It's really cool, and I actually think it'd be neat if laptop companies adopted this tech for their trackpads, if Steam hasn't patented it, but it gives the user this secondary feedback of how much they've moved their cursor by. And you don't, without even looking at the screen, right? You can just be like, okay, that was 8 clicks, or it felt like a certain number of clicks, and it's a consistent feel every time you use that input. So it's good for any kind of RTS games or kind of top view strategy things where you're navigating around. It's actually really cool. It's just that the haptics are definitely a lot weaker than the big boy controller from a few years ago. There's also a gyroscope, and this is something that has existed on multiple control mechanisms before. It feels okay, and you can tweak it a lot in the settings, but I've never been drawn to it. I've always found them not as precise as I'd want a game controller to be. You also get 2 shoulder buttons on each side, as well as 2 back buttons on each side, and these buttons are great. They're positioned well so that if you want to press them, you can, but you never accidentally hit them. Like I never had a single accidental press on the back buttons. That says a lot about the kind of design on this thing, because I often smash those things by accident. The controls in general are fantastic, and because you have full customizability for each game, like you can choose whether you want to use the gyros or the thumbsticks or the directional pad, like you have all of that to tweak for every game. It's really cool. Now, in terms of the overall ergonomics of this device, it's big. It's bigger than a Switch, it's thicker than a Switch, but I think most people are gonna love the way this thing feels. Not just tolerate it, I think they're actually gonna really like it. It takes some time, no doubt. It's not something you pick up out of the box and you're like, oh, this is like a super slim, super light package. It ain't that, but it's something that when you play games on it, it just feels right. And I think they did a really good job in terms of the fit and feel of the Steam Deck. Now, even from day one, the specs of the Steam Deck looked really good on paper, but it was the price point that made it super special. $399 for the base model, and it includes that fantastic case. Lord Gaben truly knows how to appeal to the gamer, but as you climb that product tier, you get more storage, and it's faster storage, but then at the top end, you also get a matte finish on your screen. Now, my device, the review unit, is a 256 gig device, and this thing ran out of space really quickly. Like, Steam games are big, or some of them can get huge, right? Some of them are like 100 gigs, 150 gigs. So these drives can fill up quite easily. Now, if you want to, you can upgrade the system relatively easily. You pop off the back lid and you have access to the drives. You also have access to the thumbsticks if you need to replace them, if there's drift or any kind of issues with any of the modules, actually. It's just a very easily accessed system. You do need to be careful with the plastic tabs though. It doesn't need a lot of pressure to put the backplate on or to pull it off. So just be gentle with it and it should be pretty easy to access. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up this video with the topic of like what you can do with the Steam Deck. So the truth is, at this point in time, I've covered so little of what this thing can actually do. Like I've shown you some games, I've shown you some frame rates, but this is capable of so much more. For one, the community that picks this up, it's like the Steam Deck community is gonna be huge, like absolutely huge. But the other thing is that there's no drivers for this system in Windows right now. Like I installed Windows, it's very easy to get Windows onto it, but none of the hardware is functioning properly in Windows. There's no Wi-Fi driver, there's no graphics driver, so I wasn't able to test the Steam Deck properly in a Windows environment, but SteamOS is already fantastic. I do think that if you have like the 64 gig model and you want to put Windows on it, that's gonna chew up like half of the drive just from Windows alone. And also, I think you lose like the suspend and resume function, the way that SteamOS has it right now. Like you can just, turn off a game and then pick it back up and play again. You would lose that if you're running this thing in Windows. So I will be testing it in the future. It's just that I think there's some very clear advantages to just keeping SteamOS on this system. It's really good. Also, the SD card. I forgot to mention this real quickly. I tested this thing. It's kind of weird how fast some games can load off of the micro SD. It's not every game, but some of them are seriously just as fast as the internal drive. And you can install Windows on a micro SD and use that as like a separate Windows boot drive if you want. Or you can run a second partition and have both on one system. It's a computer. You can do whatever you want with it and just play games, or you know what, you could even use this as like a regular computer. You plug it up, keyboard, mouse, do your thing. That's the Steam Deck. It's fantastic. So this gets, it's just truly my full recommendation. I think there's so much I love about it. And the thing is, I've spent like 3 weeks with it. I feel like I've just barely scratched the surface of what I want to be able to try and test on this thing. There's just so much to it. I need those Windows drivers. There is one thing though, I will say that kind of bugs me about this system. It's the single USB-C. So this is everything. If you're just plugging up power and that's all you're doing with it, fantastic. But if you want to plug up any kind of peripherals, you want a keyboard, mouse, a display out, that single port, it can be limiting. Okay, there you have it, Steam Deck. Double thumbs up. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. See you guys next time.